on to the third chapter, that is the private, public and global enterprises. So in this chapter we will be looking at the private sector, the public sector, then about the global enterprises. So we are starting with private sector and public sector. So you can get a brief idea by looking at this chart. On page 61 you have a chart about the Indian economy. That is, the Indian economy can be divided into two sectors. It is the public sector and private sector. In case of public sector, it can be a departmental undertaking, a statutory corporation or a government company. In case of private sector, as we have learnt in our previous chapter, can be sole proprietorship, partnership, joint Hindu family, cooperative, company or multinational corporations. A company can be public or private limited. So we are firstly going to look at the public company, so public enterprises. So forms of organizing public sector enterprises. So here government's participation in business and economic sectors of the country needs some kind of organizational framework to function. So you have studied about the forms of business organization in the private sector, that is sole proprietorship, partnership, Hindu undivided family, cooperatives and companies. This we have discussed before. So now we are going to look at the public sector. Here in the public sector, as it grows, an important question arises with respect to how is to be organized and of what form of organization it should take. So in a public sector, what kind of enterprises are you going to start? How is it to be organized, or what form of organization it should take? So this is a major decision. So the government has a major role to play in the formation of public sector. Actually the major role is in the hands of government to how to form or what kind of an organization should be formed in the public sector. So we are looking at the different forms of public sector organization. So the forms of organization which a public enterprise may take are as can be departmental undertaking, it can be a statutory corporation or a government company. So we are looking one by one in detail. The first one is department undertaking. This is the oldest and most traditional form of organizing public enterprises. These enterprises are established as department of the ministry and are considered part of an extension of the ministry itself. So these kind of departmental enterprises, they are established as departments of ministry. It is established as a department of the ministry and it is considered an extension of the ministry. It is considered an extension of the ministry itself. The government functions through these departments and activities performed by them are an integral part of functioning of the government. The government functions, we said that the ministry has different departments, right? Ministry means the enterprise are established as the departments of ministry. So under the ministry there are different departments. These departments are functioned by the government. The government functions through these departments and activities performed by them are an integral part of the functioning of the government, because they are an important part of the function of the government. They have not been constituted as autonomous or independent institution and as such are not independent legal entities. Actually these are not independent. These are not a single independent entities. They act through the officers of the government and its employees are government employees. Actually these departments are the government functions through it. So they act through the officers of the government officers function in these departments, and also it can be the employees, and employees will be government employees who will be working in these departments. These undertaking may be under the central or the state government and the rules of the central state governments are applicable. So this can be these undertakings may be followed by a state government or a central government, and the rules of central or state government are applicable. So they have to follow the rules in which if it is a department under the central government, then the rules of the central should be followed, and if it is a department of the state government, then the rules of the state must be followed. So examples of these undertakings are railway and post and telegraph departments. This is an example. Like railway is a great example because they function under the central. So they have the rules which the central provides. We are looking at the features. The main characteristics of department undertakings are as follows. The funding of this enterprise come directly from the government treasury and an annual appropriation from the budget of the government. The funds for carrying of, if suppose for railway it needs different funds for doing several activities, so these funds come directly from the government. It can be central government, state government. Next is they are subject to accounting and audit controls applicable to the government activities. Since it is a department of the government, the accounts have to be audited. The employees of the enterprise are government servants. That is because they are the departments of state government or central government. The enterprises, the employees will also be a government employee, and the recruitment and conditions are the same as that of other employees directly under government. So they are recruited on the basis of the rules and procedures followed by the central or state government. Then it is considered to be a major subdivision of the government. It is a major subdivision of the government, and they are accountable to the ministry. If they have prohibited any law or any default in doing their activities, then they are responsible. They are accountable to the ministry because they are controlled under a ministry. Right? Department is under a ministry. Now going to the merits, it can be. First one is these undertakings facilitate Parliament to exercise effective control over their operation. That is, the Parliament will be having a control over the operations done by these departments. Next, they ensure a high degree of public accountability. That is, they are accountable to the public. They are answerable to the public. Next is the revenue earned by the enterprise goes directly to the treasury. If the revenue earned by the railway, that directly goes to the treasury, and it is an income for the government. Next is where national security is concerned, this form is more suitable since it is under the direct control and supervision of the ministry. For a safety and security, as it is under the control of a ministry or government, it is the most suitable form of organization. Coming to the limitations, the department undertakings fail to provide flexibility which is essential for the smooth operation of business. As it is under the control of the ministry, it is not flexible. It failed to provide flexibility. Next is the employees of the heads of departments of such undertakings are not allowed to take independent decisions. They are not allowed to take independent decisions without the approval of the ministry concerned. That is because it is a department under the ministry. The ministry is having the major right to take decisions. So the employees there have no role in taking a decision. Next is these enterprises are unable to take advantages of business opportunities. The bureaucrats overcautious and conservative approval does not allow them to take risky ventures, because there may be people sitting in this organization may not have much knowledge in the management field or something like that. Then they are not able to take advantage of the business opportunities, and moreover sometimes bureaucrats overcautious or their activities lead them not to take risky ventures, or it doesn't provide a business opportunity. They cannot take an advantage of business opportunity. Next is there is red tapeism in day-to-day operations. No action can be taken unless it goes through the proper channels of authority. Next is there is a lot of political interferences. Red tapeism also means that is doing some defaulting activities or activities which are not proper. They are doing some means cheating or not manipulating the accounts or something like that activities takes, then it means no action can be taken unless it goes through proper channels of authority, because if some authority checks, then only they can understand such a default has been made. So it has to go through a proper channel. So there is a lot of political interference, means political parties interfere in the business activities to the ministry. They have power. Then is these organizations are usually insensitive to consumer needs and do not provide adequate services to them. Actually, these are not mainly existing for providing the needs, satisfying the needs of consumers. Sometimes they do not provide services, so that may be a limitation. The second form is statutory corporation. First one is developmental. The second one is statutory corporation. Statutory corporation, public enterprise brought into existence by the Special Act of Parliament. So these corporations are brought by the Special Act of Parliament. The Act defines its powers and functions, rules, regulations. As in the case of departmental, it was the ministry who will be taking the control and decision. But here it will be the Act of the Parliament, the Special Act of the Parliament, which will regulate and govern the employees who are working in a statutory corporation. It is a body corporate created by legislature with defined powers and functions and financially independent with a clear control over a specified area of particular type of commercial activity. It is a corporate person has the capacity of acting in its own name. That is, it has its own name and it can act in the name of that corporation. Coming to the feature, statutory corporation are set up under the Act of Parliament. It's a special Act of Parliament and it defines its powers, regulations, control, everything. This type of organization is wholly owned by the state. Usually the state government mainly forms this type of organization, and the government will be having the responsibility, and the government will appropriate the profits earned by these corporations. Next is a statutory corporation is a body corporate that can be sued, enter into contract or acquire property in its name. That is, this type of corporation, someone can file a suit in the name of the corporation, or the corporation can file a case against somebody, and it also have a right to acquire property in its name, right, to hold property in its own name. And this type of enterprise usually independently financed. This is independent. In the case of developmental, we said that it is not independent because it is controlled by the ministry. Here it is independently financed. Next is statutory corporation is not subject to the same accounting and auditing procedures applicable to the government. It is also not concerned with the central budget of the government. Means the statutory corporation, because every time audit is not done. In the case of departmental, proper audit is to be done. Next is the employee of these enterprises are not government or civil servants. They are not governed by government rules and regulations. So since it is by an act and it is not by the government, the employees may not be government employees. And coming to the merits, they enjoy independence. As we said, it is independent. Then these funds of these organizations don't come from the central budget, because it is not a government or central government or state government on. So the funds does not come from central or state. So they doesn't interfere in any matters. Since they are autonomous, they frame their own policies, because the independence, so they can frame their own policies. It's because it is according to an act, so act will be framing the policies. Then this statutory corporation is a valuable instrument for economic development. It has the power of the government combined with the initiative of private enterprise. It is a statutory corporation and it is a great form of organization for the economic development. Coming to the limitations, in reality statutory corporation does not enjoy as much operational flexibility. It doesn't have much flexibility. Next is government and political interference. In the case of department also we said this, that is the government and political interference here also arises. Then corruption exists. Then the government means corruption exists because political interference is there. The government has practice of appointing advisors to the board. It curbs the freedom of corporation entering into contracts and other decision. If there is any disagreement, the matter is referred to the government for final decision. This further delays action. And in case of any conflict if arises, this matter is referred to the government. They pass it to the government for its solving the problem. So it will cause delay. The third form of public form of organization is the government company. The government company is established under the Companies Act 2000 and registered and governed by the provisions of the Act. Government company is registered under the Companies Act 2013, and these are established for purely business purposes. These are purely for business purposes, and the true spirit compete with companies in the private sector. So these type of government companies are doing business. They purely business purpose. Coming to the features, government companies have certain characteristics which make them distinct from other forms of organization. First, it is an organization created under the Companies Act. So all the provisions will be related to the Companies Act 2013 or any other company law. The company can file a suit against any third party, or a third party can also file suit on the name of company. Then they can enter into contract, acquire property. Next is the management of the company is regulated. The management of the company is regulated by the provisions of the Companies Act, so it should act accordingly to as per the provisions set in the Companies Act. Next is the employees of the company are appointed according to their rules and regulations as contained in the memorandum and articles of association, because here it is not a government employee, or the ministry is not having any interference in this, and the employees are selected according to the provisions contained in the memorandum and articles of association. These are the documents of the company. These are the main documents of the company stating its rules and regulations and how it is formed. And these companies are exempted from accounting and audit rules and procedures. An auditor is appointed by the central government, and the annual report is to be presented. Here an auditor is appointed by a central government, and the auditing report has to be provided to the central government. Next is the government company obtains its funds from government shareholding, because its funds it gets from the government and other private shareholders. Through prospectus it can raise funds. So coming to the merits, government company can be established by fulfilling the requirements of the Indian Companies Act. So a separate act in the parliament is not needed. So these companies are governed by the Companies Act 2013. Then it has a separate legal existence, as we said discussed in the previous chapter, that it has a separate legal entity apart from its members or government. It enjoy autonomy in the management decision, because the managers take the decision. And then these companies are providing goods and services at reasonable price, because they are existing to satisfy the needs of the consumers. So they provide goods and services at reasonable price, and they are able to control the market. Next is the limitations. Since the government is the only shareholder in some of the companies, the provisions of the Companies Act does not require much relevance. That is, sometimes the government may be the only shareholder in some of the companies where the public is not having any role. So in that case, the provisions of Companies Act will not be applicable. Second one is, it evades constitutional responsibility which a company financed by the government should have. It is not directly answerable to Parliament, as it is it is based on the Companies Act, and the Parliament has less interference. It is not directly answerable to the Parliament. Next is the government being a sole shareholder, management and administration rests in the hands of the government. As we said that if the shareholder is the only if the government is the only shareholder, then the management and administration rest in the hands of the government. The government will look after it. So the main purpose of a government company registered like other companies is defeated. If it is a government company, the main purpose of a government company registered like other companies is defeated, because the only shareholder is the government, then maybe the control will be in the hands of government. Sometimes it can be, not every company will be having the shareholders as government. And B.